There are so many Harry Potter theories out there, and I've also added quite a few this year. So if you like Harry Potter theories, just keep watching. I have made a compilation of every single Harry Potter theory that I put out this year. So sit back, relax, and just enjoy the ample amount of Harry Potter theories that I've made. Does Voldemort have other powers that aren't even talked about within the book? And maybe Voldemort doesn't even realize he has these powers. Let's talk about that. So we know that Voldemort was conceived under the influence of love potion, which caused him to not be able to feel love, which is ultimately his weakness. And if you're interested in that, make sure to check out this video here. I posted a theory about his weakness and what ultimately caused his downfall in the series. What's love? I know that's the power the Dark Lord knows not is love, but that's another whole theory that we can get into later. But this theory is, does Voldemort have powers that we don't even discuss within the books? So in the series, when we talk about Tom Riddle, not Voldemort, but Tom Riddle, it's always talked about that he just has a certain charm over the people he talks to. Everybody seems to listen to him and feel that he is the best person in the world. They think he will do great things, and that he just seems to have a certain respect from the administration of Hogwarts, except for Dumbledore. Dumbledore sees right through him. And Voldemort may or may not know that he has this power, but there's certain things throughout the series that kind of point to this power. And the power I'm talking about is charm speak. I know that's not the proper term within this, and it's never brought up. Those of you who like the PJO series and further, you know what charm speak is. It's a power that some creatures and demigods have that allows them to talk and you do whatever they want. Does Voldemort have charm speak? I don't think it's something that gets brought up as a power that anybody knows about. I don't even think Dumbledore understands that's the power that he has, because it's a power that was instilled by him being conceived under the love potion. Because there's a point in the flashback when Dumbledore first meets Tom, Tom goes, tell the truth, and demands the truth. And Dumbledore kind of tells him the truth. And it's one of those things that it's like, okay, does he get his way often? Like, he's able to control these children and bring them to a cave to torture them without even trying. And it's like people probably assume, oh, well, maybe he was able to like do a low level Imperio. But then when he gets to school, even Harry talks about when he met Diary Tom Riddle was like, yeah, all of the professors loved me except for Dumbledore. Dumbledore never seemed to trust me. And maybe there's a reason for that. Maybe Gellert Grindelwald also had charm speak. So Dumbledore was aware of charm speak, at least on a minimal level, and had kind of just was able to understand, hey, I don't trust you. Maybe. Not really sure why it worked on some people and not on others, but maybe because Dumbledore was a powerful Occlumens, charm speak doesn't work on him. But Tom was able to do basically whatever he wanted within school, and even afterwards. He was able to get a job at Borgin and Burke. He was able to charm his way with Hepzibah Smith to steal her items and her heart. So what gave him this power? If it's not well known, it's probably the love potion. If the most powerful love potion in the world, Amortentia, was multiply dosed in Tom Riddle Sr., and then Tom Riddle baby, Voldemort, was conceived while that potion was in Tom Sr.'s system, like probably multiple doses after multiple doses, and probably not a great thing for his health, but if Tom Riddle Jr. was conceived under Amortentia, the strongest love potion, maybe it gave him that power. Maybe he doesn't even have that power. Maybe he's just that suave. But for someone who doesn't understand love and only really understands fear, it's interesting that he's able to basically have all of these people love and adore him while he's Tom Riddle. Once he becomes Voldemort, I think it's more fear than love. But even Bellatrix Lestrange, like, who's married, and there's a theory that I did on that as well. She was forced into that marriage. She really wanted to be with Voldemort, but, you know, Andromeda kind of ruined it for her. But Voldemort also didn't love her and didn't understand love. He just saw it as loyalty and unwilling admiration. Why is it unwilling admiration? Because he just has that certain speech, the charm speak. And like I said, there's not really any proof, but the way that it's talked about on how he had this following and that these professors just admired him, all the students seemed to admire him. He just had a huge following and could have done great things, but seemed to not want to do that. Voldemort may not have even known of this power. He may just thought, people love me because I'm so powerful. But maybe it's just the way he talked. Maybe it's just the way he walked. But in the end, there is not really any proof because charm speak is not something that is talked about in the series at all. But if anybody had charm speak in the Harry Potter series, I definitely would think it was Voldemort. And maybe Gellert Grindelwald, because even in the Fantastic Beast movies, which are loosely canon, Grindelwald seemed to have a certain control over people with just his words. And yeah, he may have been just convincing, but it seemed like something a little bit more nefarious. But that's up to you. Let me know in the comments. Do you think Voldemort had charm speak, or was he just a good talker? Let me know. And as always, make sure to like and subscribe and stay marvelous. Nox. What was Voldemort's ultimate downfall? Was it he basically just thought nobody would find his Horcruxes? Or was it the fact that he did not understand the concept of love? That's what we're going to talk about today. Did Voldemort have no concept of love? Or did he just think it wasn't important? Let's talk about some of the things that we do know about Voldemort. Number one, Voldemort was a Legilimens. We don't think he was a natural Legilimens meaning they are able to just read minds without having to actually practice on it. We've seen two in the series, which is Snape and Queenie, but we've seen a lot of Master Legilimens as well, like with Dumbledore and Voldemort, and maybe Bellatrix and Narcissa, but also we see Occlumens. Legilimens mean people who can read minds. Occlumens mean people who can prevent their minds from being read. You don't have to be a good Legilimens to be a good Occlumens and vice versa, but most of the time they come hand in hand, because if you can read a mind, you can understand how to keep your mind from being read. But being an Occlumens is rather important for how this works. So Voldemort prides himself on being able to know when people lie to Lord Voldemort. Do not lie to Lord Voldemort. He knows when you are lying. But we do have two people who successfully lie to Voldemort in the series. One on multitudes of occasions, and one that turned the tide of the war in such a way that Voldemort lost. So let's talk about it. The first one is, of course, Snape. Snape lied to Voldemort on multiple occasions on one small truth that he was hiding, is that he had decided to turn against Voldemort because he cared about Lily. And it's like, okay, Voldemort probably can see, hey, look, I know who you care about. But he doesn't look any further than that, because he thinks caring about people, that's stupid. Who would do that? Because it's a weakness. He's not going to dig any further than, you care about them. But if he had, he could have looked past the I care about Lily and realized I care about Lily so much that I am plotting your downfall. And that's how Snape was able to lie to Voldemort. Snape was a good Occlumens. He probably could tie things up. And a normal person facing Voldemort probably doesn't put their loved ones and put secrets behind their loved ones. Because Snape even says, it's not like reading a book. It's going through and finding certain important memories that are locked behind other things, if you think about other things. So Snape knew, if I hide my true reasoning behind my love for Lily, Voldemort won't dig any deeper. But if he were to read one of his other subordinates' minds and see, you do care about someone, he would be able to look at that for the reason, because it's probably classified under fear, because most people who face Voldemort are just like, I'm afraid of you. I hope you don't hurt me or the people I love. And Voldemort's like, good, you fear me. Let me look what you fear most. You fear me hurting your children. You have children. Good. Your secrets are hidden behind fear, where Snape hid his secrets behind love. Voldemort only cared about what you were afraid of. He doesn't care about what you love, because what you are afraid of is your weakness and how I can use that against you. And you're probably thinking, okay, so what does that have to do with Voldemort's downfall? Well, Snape's not the only one who was able to hide a lie behind love. Narcissa Malfoy was also able to hide a lie behind love. When Harry went and faced Voldemort within the Forbidden Forest and just said, I will not fight you, you can kill me, okay, and was laying on the forest floor, Narcissa went over and checked. And what did she do when she checked? Audience, of course, she said, is Draco alive? And Harry imperceptibly, and when she stands up, she says, Harry Potter is dead! And of course, Voldemort probably didn't even think, I should read her mind and make sure that she is not lying to me. But also at the same time, I think being a master legilimens is, it's just naturally turned on at that point. Like, he's been doing it for so long, he could have read her mind. Just, she didn't have to say anything. She could have just stood up and he's probably, Harry Potter is dead. Because she's probably thinking, yes, Harry is dead, Harry is dead, Harry is dead, Harry is dead. But behind it is, I love Draco. I'm so glad he is alive because Harry kept him alive because Harry is alive. Harry's dead. And Voldemort just sees Harry is dead. Harry is dead because she's hiding the lie behind love. She's not afraid of Voldemort anymore. Her son is alive. That's all that matters to her. I don't care about Voldemort. If Harry is alive, Voldemort may fall. And the war may be over, and Draco may be alive. So that's all that matters to her, is that her son is alive. That's all she cares about. So Draco is alive. Harry is alive. Harry being alive is hidden behind Draco's life. The love for Draco. And that ultimately is just Voldemort's downfall, is, he can't see lies of love. Because her saying Harry is dead means that they get to go to the castle because the war is over. And she gets to go and find her son. But if Harry is alive, guess what? She's probably dead, and so is her family. Because Voldemort will be pissed. And when Voldemort is pissed, he takes it out on the closest person, which would have been her. So, Harry is dead. I get to see my son. That's it. That's the downfall of Voldemort right there. Because Narcissa was tired of Voldemort and was able to lie because of the love for her son. Because Voldemort doesn't understand love and only understands fear. And the reason he doesn't understand love is because he was conceived under a love potion. And there's more to that. And I have another theory that I'm going to post eventually about maybe other powers that he received from the love potion conception. So look forward to that. Make sure to subscribe for that. But that's it. Quick and easy theory. Voldemort cannot see past love. He only sees fear. So if you were to come up to him and tell him a lie and not be afraid of him, he wouldn't even see it. I mean, he may see it, but if you were doing it out of love and not out of fear, he wouldn't even know you're lying to him. That's why Snape was able to get away with it. That's why Narcissa was able to get away with it. Do not lie to Lord Voldemort. What do you think he called himself Voldemort for? He wanted to instill fear into the hearts of anybody who faced him. Because you know what? Who needs loyalty when they're afraid of you? So that's it for today. As always, stay marvelous and Nox. Was the marriage of Bellatrix and Rodolphus Lestrange all a ploy for the Black family to get back into the good graces of the Dark Lord? That is what we're talking about today, and what we are going to discuss is the marriages of the Black sisters, because some of them make sense, some of them don't. And really, there might be a reason for that. So let's go through the history of the Lestranges and the Blacks and kind of break down on what might have happened. So let's talk about what we know about the Black sisters. Bellatrix is the oldest, Andromeda is the middle child, and Narcissa is the youngest. They were all born about 5 years apart, 1951, 1953, and 1955. So they're very relatively the same age, slightly a bit older than Sirius and the rest of the Marauders, as well as Snape, but it would put Lucius around the same age as Andromeda. We know Bellatrix married Rodolphus Lestrange, but never had children with him. She did maybe have children with Voldemort, but that's if you consider Cursed Child canon. But that future timeline does not affect this theory, so we're just going to push it to the side. Andromeda married Ted Tonks, who was a muggle-born wizard that she met at Hogwarts. And then you have Narcissa, who married Lucius Malfoy, who is either the same age or a little bit older. Based on when the Marauders go to school and them discussing that Lucius Malfoy is at the school for a couple years, he's probably either the same age or maybe a year younger than Narcissa. But all in all, Narcissa marries Lucius Malfoy. So now let's talk about the Lestranges. So we know Rodolphus Lestrange was in school with Voldemort. So he is either the same age or maybe even older than Tom Riddle in the flashback of the Slug Club, where Voldemort inevitably asks about what's a Horcrux. We see a Lestrange. We hear him call him Lestrange, you owe me a paper. That could have been Rabastin, that could have been Rodolphus, but assuming based on how siblings are at least a year or two around the same age, and Harry even remarks that a lot of these boys look older than Tom, it's safe to assume Rodolphus is in the Slug Club and probably the same age, if not older than Voldemort, which means he graduated around 1945, which is 6 years before Bellatrix was even born. Now, another thing that we should talk about with Lestranges is Fantastic Beasts and where to find them. Although some people do not consider Fantastic Beasts canon, we do need to talk about some of the other underlying details of the Lestrange family. I may not think the story as a whole is canon, but a lot of the magical details and just outlines of characters are probably canon to the series, where the whole Credence storyline is probably not canon. But let's go to the Lestrange family. We already know that the Lestranges are a little bit sketchy when it comes to marriage and love. They may have a wife who has a kid, but then be like, I want another wife and have another kid, which is where Lita came from. So clearly the Lestrange family, they have a little bit of sketchiness when it comes to forced marriage. They're okay with it. So then it may be safe to assume the fact that Rodolphus Lestrange is 23 years older than Bellatrix, there may be some level of forced marriage there. Probably like, hey, you're pureblood, I'm pureblood. Let's get together to keep our pureblood family line together and continue our reign of terror as evil purebloods. But why did they need to bring their pureblood family together? There's probably plenty of older women that Rodolphus probably could have married, as well as Bellatrix could have married younger pureblood men, such as Crabbe and Goyle. They were probably around the same age as Lucius. When Lucius was young, it probably looked like Malfoy. He probably had Crabbe and Goyle following behind him the entire time. So why would the Black family marry off their oldest daughter to a man who is 23 years older than her? Well, it's simple. Rodolphus Lestrange is one of the original Death Eaters. He is also probably one of the right-hand men of Voldemort at the time. So of course, marry your oldest daughter to Voldemort. You've got an in the new Dark Lord regime, because you've just given your oldest daughter, so the Black family wealth, to one of the right-hand men of Lord Voldemort. So when he comes into power, guess what? You've got an in. Lucius is also slowly becoming a Death Eater, but Narcissa has already charmed him, so she's got an in. But why did Bellatrix have to redeem the family Black by marrying one of the right-hand men of Voldemort? Well, because Andromeda Black married a Muggleborn, a filthy mudblood, which was a disgrace on the family Black. A pure blood family marrying a mudblood? That's a disgrace to the Black family. And that is why Bellatrix had to basically be sold off to Voldemort and married to Rodolphus Lestrange, because the Black family was about to be ousted by Lord Voldemort, because it's like, one of your children is mating with a mudblood. That's almost as bad as mating with a muggle. And then they had kids. They had a kid, Nymphadora Tonks, who then goes on to marry a werewolf. Could the Black family sink any lower? But of course, Andromeda marries Tonks, who she met in school. So she's dating a mudblood. Of course, Narcissa's dating Lucius, who's got money. The Malfoy family is very well known within the wizarding world. But you have your oldest daughter, who doesn't seem to get along with many men. She scares them off. There's something wrong with her. But if she doesn't get married, then the Black family fortune will pass down to Andromeda, and you can't have that. No, the Black family fortune going to a mudblood? That's like the worst thing that can happen within the wizarding world, at least if you're racist. So, what better to do than see the rising regime of the Dark Lord, Lord Voldemort, as he's starting to rise, and say, Lord Voldemort, please forgive us for our middle child. I don't know what went wrong with her. We would like to offer our oldest daughter to you. And Voldemort, of course, says, no, I will not marry, especially blood traitors. You can marry Rodolphus. And they said, oh, okay, as long as we can stay in your good graces, sir. And that's what they did. They married their oldest daughter off to one of the servants of Lord Voldemort, allowing the Black family to stay relevant. Because, of course, the Black family's already on thin ice by this point, because you also have Sirius Black, who became a Gryffindor. Regulus kind of redeemed that side of the Black family. But you have a sister who becomes married to a mudblood, and then another one of your family member becomes a Gryffindor. The Black family is tainted. So, of course, at this point, Bellatrix is the only way to save it. You have two. You have Narcissa, who's marrying Lucius, and you have Regulus Black, who I hear has become Slytherin. But you still have Bellatrix, who doesn't want to get married, so of course she has to be forced to marry Rodolphus Lestrange for probably a very, very handsome sum of money that is paid to the Lestrange family to keep the marriage going. But it always seemed weird to me that there was such a large age gap between Bellatrix and Rodolphus, and the fact that they were married for 10 plus years before the fall of Voldemort and never had children. So clearly she did not love him. She was in love with the Dark Lord. She was hoping to marry the Dark Lord. That's why she wasn't marrying anybody. But alas, to save her family's reputation, she did have to marry a pureblood, and that pureblood was the Lestrange family. So what do you think? Do you think the marriage of Bellatrix and Rodolphus Lestrange was a way for the Black family to fix their reputation and get back into the good graces of Lord Voldemort as he's rising to power? Or do you think just purebloods marry purebloods and that's what happens? Let me know in the comments, and if you like these kind of theories that kind of deep dive into the minutia of the Harry Potter books, make sure to like and subscribe, and we'll see you next time. Make sure to stay marvelous, and as always, Nox. Good news! I have merch now. This is a good representation of the merch that I have, but this is a prototype. But if you check the link in the description, and I will have a link somewhere on the screen showing off the merch that we have. Perfect for a gift for people who like this channel. But make sure to check it out, like and subscribe, and let's get back to the videos. Let's talk about Harry getting lucky in the Harry Potter universe, and specifically let's talk about Felix Felicis. Is it actually lucky, or is it all a lie? That is what we're going to be talking about today. All right, so let's get down to the basics of everything. Felix Felicis, a very complicated potion that, if done wrong, doesn't work, or bad things happen to you. We never get told how it's done wrong. We never get told what bad things happen. Just, it's a very difficult potion to brew, and it's also said that if you use it too much, it starts to not work right. Suspicious. Those are really unique descriptors. And I know in a lot of the potions, like Polyjuice Potion, if you brew it wrong, bad things happen. Okay, but specifically this one is interesting. So let's talk about magic in general. Magic is almost instinctual within the Harry Potter universe. Yes, they use wands and they have to say incantations, but we know there's also wandless magic, so you don't actually need a wand. What the wand does is controls the power and enhances it. You're pushing your magical power through a magical item, causing it to be stronger, because it's also said that wandless magic is not as strong as wand magic. So like wandless magic, yes, you can use wandless magic to move things, but using wand magic, you can do more complex spells. You can't point at someone with your finger and go Avada Kedavra and kill someone. No, you'd have to have a wand for that. That is wand magic. But we've seen Harry use wandless magic throughout the series, as with Lumos, he lights up his wand without touching it. Technically that's wand magic, but still. But when he blows up his Aunt Marge, he talks about how he ends up on the roof, which could actually be him apparating on the roof. It's never really clear of how he ends up on the roof, whether he jumps, but he just said he went to go hide, and next thing he knew, he was on the roof. So to me, could have apparated, could have just turned a little bit and was like, I need to get away from these bullies, and ended up on a roof. He also turned his teacher's wig blue when I think she embarrassed him. He shrunk a sweater that he didn't want to wear. He also grew his hair back, and all of that was almost instinctual. So when he felt unsafe or just extreme emotion, it came out as magic. So what if the Felix Felicis potion takes advantage of the fact that little magic is instinctual and it doesn't actually do anything except make you think that you're lucky, which then allows your body to use magic in a way that makes you feel lucky. So you're probably thinking, what the heck are you talking about? Because that makes no sense, because Slughorn even talks about how great it is. Well, yeah, that's the lie of Felix Felicis, is nobody knows that it's fake. They're just told that if you do it wrong, it doesn't work. And it's so temperamental that, you know, even if you do it right, it could still not work. And it's like, that's because it's a placebo. Those who don't know what a placebo is, it's a sugar pill that a doctor would give you and say, here, take this, it'll make you feel better. There's nothing in it. It's just a fake pill. But then in your brain, because you don't realize that it's a sugar pill, you're like, wow, doc, I instantly feel better. So much so that it's become just an effect called the placebo effect, which is if somebody tells you a lie and you believe it and it actually works because you believed it, that's the power of Pine Sol. But what if the Felix Felicis is just a placebo, but since it's going for magical people, magical things do happen. You feel lucky. All of the good things are happening because your inhibitions are a lot lower when you think, the Felix Felicis is going to give me a wonderful day. Your inhibitions are lower. Your magic is free because you're like, I'm free. I can do whatever I want because I'm lucky, and the magic will just kind of help guide you. And it's not the magic of the potion, it's the magic of the wizard. And the best example of it is Ron. Ron thought he took Felix Felicis. And when Harry was describing how he felt, Ron was like, hell yeah, that's exactly how it feels to take Felix Felicis. I would know I took it, but didn't actually take it. But he believed he had taken Felix Felicis, and everything went his way. So, is Felix Felicis real? Could be. We don't have enough proof. Is Felix Felicis not real? More than likely. And because Hermione and the Silver Trio know Harry's story with Felix Felicis, the lie continues. They're like, well, clearly it works. Clearly, Felix Felicis is real. So when they take it, it works for them too. I'm sure some of you are going to probably say, well, Slughorn has used it more than a few times. Like in the movie, in the 8th movie, he chugs back what may be Felix Felicis. Well, in the books, he doesn't actually do that. There is no spot where it goes, oh, he took Felix Felicis. And honestly, it really didn't do anything for him in that. Like, yeah, he survived, but it wasn't like he was the hero of the story. Like, it was just kind of like, hey, Slughorn is just, out to protect himself. But he says he's taken it twice and has had 2 wonderful days. And of course, Slughorn would believe the lie of Felix Felicis because, he's kind of just a manipulative person. And if somebody says, hey, look, this will make you lucky, and he'll go, oh, well, you're a great potion maker as well as I've never heard of Felix Felicis. Let me try this. And probably tried it and had a good day because he believed that the Felix Felicis works. And maybe that's the magic of the Felix Felicis, is that if you believe it works, then it works. But at the end of the day, I think Felix Felicis is Facus Felicis. There is no luck involved. It tricks the mind into using your inherent magic to make you feel lucky. If you like theories like this, make sure to like, subscribe, and I guess hit that hype button is what they're telling me to say now. Stay marvelous, Nox. Hello everyone, welcome to Marvelous Marauders. We all know Neville Longbottom as the underdog who grew into a true Gryffindor hero. But what if I told you Neville's biggest struggle, his forgetfulness, wasn't just his being clumsy? What if it wasn't his fault at all? What if it was a result of something far darker? A memory charm placed on him as a child. And believe it or not, it took Mad-Eye Moody and an unforgivable curse to break through that charm and unlock the hero within. From the moment we meet Neville, he's known for one thing: forgetting stuff.
Hey, look! Neville's got a remember-all.
I've read about those. When the smoke turns red, it means you've forgotten something.
The only problem is, I can't remember what I've forgotten.
But it doesn't stop there. He constantly forgets passwords to Gryffindor Tower, once saying, "Thank goodness you found me. I've been out here for hours. I couldn't remember the new passwords to get into bed." And it's not just a one-time thing. In Prisoner of Azkaban, Neville loses the list of passwords he wrote down to avoid forgetting them. I wrote them down, but I must have dropped them somewhere. It's played for laughs, but what if there's more to it? This isn't just poor memory. It's chronic. And it's not normal for a kid his age. Now here's where it gets heartbreaking. Neville's parents, Frank and Alice Longbottom, were tortured into insanity. when he was just a baby.
I know for a fact this person took part in the capture, and by means of the Cruciator's curse, torture of the Horror Frank Longbottom and his wife!
But unlike Harry, who vividly remembers the night his parents died, Neville doesn't recall anything about that traumatic event. Not even a flash. That's unusual, right? The theory is that someone, maybe his maybe a healer, placed a powerful memory charm on Neville to erase the trauma of witnessing his parents' torture. And memory charms can be dangerous. Just look at what happened to Bertha Jorkins. Barty Crouch Jr. even admitted, "My father put a very powerful memory charm on her to make her forget what she'd found out. Too powerful. He said it damaged her memory permanently." Sound familiar? Bertha wasn't always forgetful. Sirius Black even said, "The Bertha I knew wasn't forgetful at all. Quite the reverse. She was a bit dim, but she had an excellent memory for gossip." We also see the effect in Goblet of Fire when Mr. Weasley explains the side effects of memory modifications after Mr. Roberts, the Muggle campsite manager, had his memory erased following the torture by the Death Eaters the night before. "He'll be all right," said Mr. Weasley, quietly as they marched off into the moor. "Sometimes when a person's memory is modified, it makes him a bit disoriented for a while. And that was a big thing that had to make him forget." The key phrase is a big thing they had to make him forget. Mr. Roberts was only tortured for a short time, but the memory modification still left him confused and dazed. Confused and dazed. That reminds me of someone. Another example, Gilderoy Lockhart. After his backfired memory charm in Chamber of Secrets, he completely loses his memory.
Say goodbye to your memories.
Oblivion!
And when we see him later in St. Mungo's, he's still lost. These cases show us that memory charms can cause permanent damage when overused or done improperly. One thing that stands out is, why is Neville's boggart the form of Snape?
Neville, what frightens you most of all?
Professor Snape.
Sorry?
Professor Snape.
Professor Snape, yeah. Frightens all.
Instead of a Death Eater? Specifically, one of the people who tortured his parents. Given what happened to him, you'd think that would be his worst fear, right? But Neville doesn't remember that night. His fear isn't shaped by the past he's forgotten, but by the present he knows. And in his day-to-day life, the most intimidating figure he faces is Snape. This suggests that his greatest fear isn't just a person, it's feeling powerless, being singled out, and not being good enough. But here's the twist. In Goblet of Fire, during Moody's lesson on the unforgivable curses, something extraordinary happens. When Moody casts the Cruciatus Curse on a spider, Neville has an intense reaction. Harry looked around at Hermione. She was looking not at the spider, but at Neville, and Harry, following her gaze, saw that Neville's hands were clenched upon his desk in front of him. His knuckles white, his eyes wide and horrified. Why does he react so strongly? Because that curse unlocked something buried deep inside him. The emotional trauma, the suppressed memories, were bubbling just beneath the surface. Moody, intentionally or not, broke that memory charm. After that moment, we see a different Neville. He starts excelling at defense against the dark arts, shows remarkable courage in Dumbledore's army, and eventually leads the fight against the Death Eaters at Hogwarts. By the time we get to Deathly Hallows, he's fearless, standing up to Voldemort himself. "I'll join you when hell freezes over," said Neville. "Dumbledore's army!" And in the most heroic moment of his life, The boy who couldn't remember passwords becomes the man who remembers who he is and fights for it. Neville Longbottom's story isn't just about overcoming fear. It's about reclaiming an identity stolen from him. By trauma, by magic, and by the past. And that's why he's not just a side character. He's the unsung hero of the wizarding world. But really the question is, what do you think? Was Neville's forgetfulness really caused by a memory charm? Did Barty Crouch Jr. unintentionally unlock his true potential? Let me know your thoughts in the comments. Don't be like Neville and forget to like, subscribe, and hit that bell for more deep dives into the Harry Potter universe. Thanks for watching. Nox. Hello everyone, and welcome back to Marvelous Marauders. We all know Ron's first wand, right? The poor battered thing with the unicorn hair poking out of the end of it barely worked even before it was snapped in half in Chamber of Secrets. You know that one, right? Remember when we first meet Ron and he told Harry that his brother Charlie gave it to him because he got a new one? Why did Charlie get a new wand? That's not how wands work. But what if I told you it was someone else's wand before it was Charlie's? I know. Crazy. But because here's the thing, wands don't like being used by other wizards. And this particular wand that Ron had, it was like the worst wand to even try to pass down and be inherited. So today we're diving into the hidden story of Ron's first wand, how it connects to a tragic piece of wizarding history, and why it might have once belonged to someone who died fighting for the Order. All right, so let's start with the basics. In Sorcerer's Stone, Ron just straight up tells Harry that his wand used to belong to Charlie. Makes sense, right? Older siblings get a new wand. Younger siblings get stuck with the old one. Classic hand-me-down multi-child family. But there's a huge problem with that. That's not how wands work. I mean, Ollivander famously says, "The wand chooses the wizard. Those who study word lore know this much."
The wand chooses the wizard, Mr. Potter. That much has always been clear to those of us who have studied wand lore.
And Pottermore even backs this up. Wands bond with their owners. If you inherit one, you're basically using a wand that actively doesn't want to work for you. They will under certain circumstances, but in most cases, if I had a wand and I gave it to you, it's not going to work for you. We see it many times in the series. But here's where things get weird. We know the exact type of a wand that Ron used. It was an ash wood with unicorn hair core. And according to wand lore, this is one of the worst kinds to pass down. Ash wands are incredibly loyal. And Pottermore even says, the ash wand cleaves to its one true master and ought not to be passed on or gifted from the original owner, because it will lose power and skill. This tendency is extreme if the core is of unicorn, because unicorn hair doesn't want to be passed down either. So basically this wand hated changing hands, and the fact that Charlie gave it up so easily, it's kind of a red flag, right? Because if this wand was truly his, if it had chosen him, he wouldn't have been able to just swap it out for a new one. So was it ever really Charlie's wand at all? So let's talk about Charlie now. We know he's obsessed with magical creatures. Hagrid even says, "Oh man, I love Charlie. And he's going to work with dragons now. Oh man." Dragons. That's a field that really doesn't require complex magic, which a wand that works for you would do. And if his wand wasn't working well, it probably is safe to assume that he wasn't good with spell casting. Like, he could probably cast all the spells, but, you know, they weren't particularly powerful. So he probably excelled more at care of magical creatures and herbology. Which, if the wand wasn't truly his, he would have never unlocked the full potential of the wand, which means the more technical subjects would have been harder for him. But not care of magical creatures or herbology, which don't require technical spells, requires knowledge and just aptitude. So let's not forget, the wand is a unicorn hair core, which is important because unicorn hair wands are ridiculously loyal. Once they bond with someone, they don't really like to change. We see that with Neville as well. But with Neville's wandwood, it was more, if Neville proved himself, it would give its loyalty. But also at the same time, it doesn't want to. And when it finally did, it broke. But that's beside the point. We're talking about Ron's wand. So unicorn hairs, if they're mistreated, they can actually die and stop working altogether. From Pottermore, unicorn hair usually remains strongly attached to the first owner, irrespective of whether he or she was an accomplished witch or wizard. They are prone to melancholy if seriously mishandled, meaning that the hair may die or need replacing. So if Charlie's wand was already fighting against him this whole time, then maybe that's because it wasn't his to begin with. Maybe it was already a secondhand wand. Which brings us to the big question. Who was the first owner? All right, this is where things get really interesting. We know that Molly Weasley's brothers, Gideon and Fabian Pruitt, fought in the first Wizarding World. And we also know they were killed by Death Eaters near the end of the Wizarding War, just because of the court cases that Harry watched in Dumbledore's memories. We really don't know a lot about Gideon and Fabian Pruitt besides they died in the Wizarding War. It was close to when the Wizarding War was ending. So if Charlie didn't get a brand new wand when he started Hogwarts, maybe that's because the Weasleys already had one that was lying around, one that may have been presented to them after the Pruitts passed. One of the only other things that we hear about the Pruitts is when Molly gives Harry his watch for his 17th birthday. We find out that it belonged to Fabian Pruitt. And when she passes it down, it's a little bit worse for wear, cracked on it, but it means a lot to Harry. But she does say, I'm so sorry I couldn't give you anything better. This was Fabian's that was given to me. But he didn't really take care of his stuff. So that might be the key detail of whose wand this is. Because if Fabian was reckless with his belongings, then there's a very good chance his wand may have been lost or destroyed in his final battle, which means it's most likely Gideon's wand that was left. And with the Weasleys' growing family, Ginny was literally just born around the time that Charlie's getting ready to go off to school. So, expenses are, and it's a girl. They have to buy new things. She can't just get hand-me-down clothes. So, we have this wand laying around. Sorry, Charlie. We can't buy you a new wand like we did Bill. Here's Gideon's wand. And that's how Charlie got the wand. Now here's where things get a little bit sad. If we assume Fabian's wand was destroyed when he died, then that means the Pruitt brothers' wands ultimately met the same fate, because what happened to Ron's wand? It snapped in two. This wand never wanted to change hands. It resisted Charlie, it resisted Ron, and by the time it got to Ron, it had been passed down so many times that it finally gave up, snapping in two. So what do you think? Could Ron's first wand have been originally Gideon Pruitt's? Did the Weasleys unknowingly hand down a wand that was only loyal to its original owner? Let me know in the comments. And don't be like Ron's wand, completely broken. Instead, like, subscribe, and hit that notification bell for more deep dives into the Wizarding World. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time. Knox. What if Dumbledore took advantage of the Defense Against the Dark Arts curse? So we all know about the curse, which doesn't allow Defense Against the Dark Arts professors to last more than a year. But what if I told you that Dumbledore took advantage of that curse to help him with his plans on taking down Voldemort? Let's talk about that. So first, let's talk about the Defense Against the Dark Arts curse, which starts off with Voldemort coming to Dumbledore and saying, I want to be the Defense Against the Dark Arts professor, and Dumbledore saying no. Subsequently, every year after that, the position needed to be filled because something happened, whether a teacher retired, or got sick, or quit, or moved to a different position, or died, or lost his memory. And that's pretty much it with the Defense Against the Dark Arts curse. That's what it is just every year, new teacher, something happens. So you kind of got to play a game of chess on trying to get people that you need in that position at the time to benefit you. And that's what Dumbledore did. So let's get into the main part of the theory. What we're going to do is a little bit different than normal theories. We're going to go through each year and talk about what we know from the books and then how Dumbledore may have used that Defense Against the Dark Arts professor to his advantage. So let's talk about the things we know from year one. If for some reason you don't know, Quirinus Quirrell is the professor of the Defense Against the Dark Arts position in the first year. He was originally a Muggle Studies professor before that, and then went off to Albania to discover himself, and came back and became the Defense Against the Dark Arts professor in Harry's first year. In Quirrell coming back in Harry's first year, he did kind of bring a certain someone with him. He brought Voldemort back, who was hiding in Albania. So that is important. This also then allowed Harry to meet Voldemort for the first time. Yes, he's already met Voldemort, but he was a baby, so he didn't really meet Voldemort. He kind of just got attacked by Voldemort, attempted murdered. And then at the end, Quirrell dies. So let's talk about how Dumbledore may have used Quirrell for his plan. So we don't know what sent Quirrell to Albania, but we know Dumbledore knew Voldemort kind of hung out in Albania. So maybe he sent Quirrell to Albania, knowing Quirrell kind of was tempted by the dark arts and maybe was a little interested in what Voldemort had to do and had some of the same ideals. And he knew Quirrell would be good bait for Voldemort because, you know, he works at Hogwarts, you know, he's coming in around the same time Harry would be in Hogwarts. So then Voldemort could finally meet magical, powerful baby who took him out and figure out what was going on. But what this allowed Dumbledore is for Voldemort to come back and prove to himself, if not anything else, that Voldemort's still alive. And of course, this does end up with Harry facing Voldemort, which is what Dumbledore kind of wanted the whole time. We've talked about it before. Dumbledore, based on a single comment at the end of the book, when Dumbledore says to Harry, wow, you really did do the whole thing, when Harry said, yeah, what about Nicholas Flamel? Because Dumbledore just assumed Harry would go down in a James Potter way, not knowing all the information and trying to fight Voldemort. But Harry actually solved the mystery and figured out everything he needed to know to be able to face Voldemort. And Dumbledore wasn't very surprised by that. He was surprised by the fact that Harry knew who Nicholas Flamel was. Now let's talk about year two. We all know the Defense Against the Dark Arts professor in year two is the lovely Gilderoy Lockhart. We all know Gilderoy Lockhart was a fraud. He wiped many wizards' memories and took their stories as his own. And Gilderoy was very prideful and loved being famous. He also seemed to want to take Harry as a protege, not to help Harry, but to leech onto Harry's fame to become more famous. Like, oh, if Harry does anything, I'll be more famous because I can say I'm the one who taught him everything he knows. In the end, though, Gilderoy wipes his own memory. So, as Dumbledore said, you have fallen upon your own sword, Gilderoy. So, let's talk about how Dumbledore may have taken advantage of the Defense Against the Dark Arts curse. Dumbledore knew Lockhart was a fraud, and Dumbledore wanted to oust Lockhart as a fraud to get revenge for some of Dumbledore's friends, because Dumbledore probably knew a few of the people that Lockhart had obliviated. Also, Dumbledore was kind of using it as a teachable moment for Harry, because of course, not only is it help Dumbledore in his agenda, but also to help Harry in raising him properly, so then he's a humble person and will face Voldemort peacefully to die as a sacrificial lamb, which would defeat Voldemort in the end. And what this does is this allows Harry to see that fame isn't everything, and you don't want to end up like Gilderoy Lockhart, where all you want to do is be famous. Alright, so let's talk about year 3 now. As we know, it's the wonderful Remus Lupin, everybody's favorite Defense Against the Dark Arts professor, and probably one of the only good Defense Against the Dark Arts professor. I think Quirrell was a good one, but, you know, he had that slight problem with Voldemort in the back of his head. And as we all know, Lupin's biggest problem is that he's a werewolf, which is very important for this theory and anything that has to do with Lupin, because, you know, it sucks being a werewolf. We know Lupin was best friends with Sirius Black back in the day when they were in school. Lupin and Sirius were friends with Harry's parents, of course. And that's kind of it on the information that we need to know for all of this. Let's get into the theory of how Dumbledore took advantage of the Defense Against the Dark Arts curse this year. Dumbledore knew Sirius was innocent. He also knew that Lupin didn't know the truth of Sirius being innocent, because it's assumed only Dumbledore may have known other than Sirius Black, and come to find out who's still alive, Peter Pettigrew. But But at the time, only Sirius Black knew that Peter Pettigrew was still alive. Dumbledore also knew that Lupin would take care of Harry and protect him from Sirius Black if Sirius Black was trying to come for Harry, and that Lupin was a good professor and would at least mentor Harry and train him on things that he needed to know, such as the Patronus spell. But Sirius's escape put a damper on Dumbledore's plans, because if the truth comes out about Sirius, then Dumbledore's plan has a wrench in it, because Harry would go and live with Sirius. As we see when they talk in Prisoner of Azkaban, Harry goes, well, can I come and live with you? Which means he would no longer live at the Dursleys, which means the blood protection would disappear. So, of course, with Lupin being a werewolf, if Lupin finds out the truth and tries to spread it, nobody's going to believe him, because guess what? He's a werewolf, and nobody likes werewolves. So that's how Dumbledore uses Lupin to his advantage in there. Number one, he would protect Harry, and number two, nobody would believe him if the truth got out, which is exactly what happened, and nobody believes him. Because, of course, during all of this, Snape is a pawn throughout, knowing Dumbledore's plan, partially. So maybe Dumbledore said, hey, listen, I need you to oust Lupin as a werewolf, and Snape goes, hell yeah! All right, now it's time to talk about year 4. The things we know about year 4 is that Trelawney made a prophecy in year 3 predicting that Voldemort would return. Dumbledore knew the importance of certain people going missing, such as Frank Bryce being murdered. Bertha Jorkins' disappearance wasn't a coincidence because she did know a lot of information. So, of course, Dumbledore was like, we're going to hire Mad-Eye Moody, who is an extremely suspicious ex-Auror who would investigate everything and everybody. We also know that Dumbledore was aware of Voldemort gaining power because of Snape, his little lackey who informs him on everything there is to do with Voldemort. And because the Dark Mark was growing, Dumbledore knew that Voldemort was gaining power. Unfortunately, Mad-Eye Moody was actually Barty Crouch Jr. the whole time. So let's talk about how Dumbledore used the position to his advantage. Of course, he knew Voldemort was growing in power and would probably be within power in the next year, so he needed to have someone on campus to protect Harry. Mad-Eye Moody would be the best. Unfortunately, he didn't realize that Mad-Eye Moody was actually Barty Crouch Jr., which does throw a kink in the plans, but in the end, everything actually works out for the better, because Voldemort does come back, which Dumbledore knew it was only a matter of time before Voldemort figured out how to come back, but he knew Voldemort was vain enough that if he did come back, he would need Harry's blood. And if he uses Harry's blood, it all goes according to plan. This all eventually leads to Voldemort's downfall. Dumbledore used Moody just to protect Harry. In the end, he didn't actually protect Harry. Let's talk about year 5. It's stated that Dumbledore couldn't find a replacement, so the Ministry stepped in and assigned based on Educational Decree 26. This also allowed the Ministry to help keep the information that Harry and Dumbledore were trying to spread about Voldemort's return under the rug, because of course the Ministry didn't want to believe it and were covering up the fact that they let a powerful dark wizard come back to power under their nose. Of course, we do know the school rebelled against the Ministry at this point, and the Ministry had to admit their mistake and react to the fact that Voldemort was back rather than prepare for Voldemort's return to prevent him from gaining power. Harry created a secret group known as Dumbledore's Army because the Ministry refused to teach Defense Against the Dark Arts. Now, let's talk about how Dumbledore may have used all of this in his favor with the Defense Against the Dark Arts curse. What if Dumbledore purposefully didn't fill the Defense Against the Dark Arts position, knowing Educational Decree 26 would bring about the Ministry's meddling in Hogwarts, knowing that Fudge already feared Dumbledore would try to take power from the Ministry? That's why in Fudge's eyes, he thought Dumbledore was fear-mongering and bringing about the end of a peaceful era, which Fudge had brought. So with the introduction of Umbridge, everybody's favorite Defense Against the Dark Arts professor, Harry felt more outcasted than he already did during this, because of course everybody was ignoring him or didn't believe him except for few people. The Defense Against the Dark Arts study was crippled, and Harry, who saw Voldemort return, was like, hey, we need to prepare, and Defense Against the Dark Arts is probably the best subject that would help us, so maybe we need to get a secret group together, which of course is what he does, and probably in the long run Dumbledore was hoping that these would be future recruits for the Order of the Phoenix. And he knew the Ministry would be out within a year because, you know, Umbridge is the Defense Against the Dark Arts professor, she's gone next year, so I can just fix everything I need to. Year 6 is probably the most obvious of Dumbledore using the Defense Against the Dark Arts curse to his advantage, because of course Dumbledore knew he was going to die. Dumbledore fixed it up with Snape that, hey, I'm going to die, how about you kill me? So Malfoy doesn't have to have death on his ledger, and we all live happily ever after. If I die, you're not going to be able to stay at Hogwarts anyway, so I'm going to give you the Defense Against the Dark Arts position, which you've always wanted. And this will also bolster your cred with the Death Eaters, so any questions about you being my lackey would eventually just disappear, because who's going to argue with you, Snape? You killed Dumbledore. And that's really it. Like, Snape kills Dumbledore. That's what Dumbledore used to take advantage of the Defense Against the Dark Arts curse, is he knew if Snape killed him, Snape would no longer be able to stay at Hogwarts, and so he would no longer be the Defense Against the Dark Arts professor. So let's get into year 7, which is a little different because, yes, it's not Dumbledore as the headmaster, but Dumbledore does kind of pull the strings behind Snape before he dies and sets it up, knowing what would happen. Snape, of course, becomes headmaster. Snape then puts Amicus Caro Scarecrow in the position of defense against the dark arts. And because Dumbledore's army has been established, it is now being led by Neville Longbottom and causing a lot of problems for the Carrows and of course Snape, but Snape doesn't actually care. So Snape, knowing the position is cursed because Dumbledore probably informed him and said, hey, you need to take advantage of this if you ever actually become headmaster, puts a Death Eater in the position, knowing that that Death Eater would only be able to stay in there for a year, and knowing that Dumbledore's army would cause as much problems for a Death Eater as humanly possible. And that's what they did. And also, it's probably the best place for Amicus Carrow because Amicus Carrow wouldn't be able to teach defense against the dark arts, which then was actually changed to dark arts that year. And having someone who is an idiot teach Slytherin's dark arts is probably a good idea instead of having an accomplished wizard such as Snape teaching dark arts. So that's it. That is how Dumbledore took advantage of the defense against the dark arts curse that Voldemort put on the position the entire time that Harry was in school. Without further ado, that's all I have for today. Make sure to like, subscribe, follow for more. Thanks for watching and we'll see you next time. Do you like my content? Do you like my content enough to pay for it? Well, if you want to see my Tuesday videos one day earlier, make sure to sign up for a membership so you can get that early. There are other perks and benefits for being a member, of course. Make sure to check it out and see what you like. But that is the main benefit. You get it a day early. I will start doing live streams and maybe even do live trivia just for members, but that's down the road. But if you are interested in getting videos early and some of the other perks of being a member, just check it out. You don't have to. I don't want you to. But if you're interested, I'll see you there. Let's get back to the videos. What if house elves are descended from goblins? There's a lot of debate in the Harry Potter universe on what is the origin of the house elf. And I think today I have finally figured out what the origin of house elves are. That is what we are talking about today. House elves could be the descendants of goblins, and there's a lot of proof that is given to us throughout the series. Let's go over the timeline of maybe what happened to the goblins to make them split into almost two different races. First, let's talk about what a house elf is. A house elf is a small, about 2 to 3 foot tall, scrawny creature with big ears, big eyes that lives to serve the wizarding race, usually found within older wizarding families, and can only be freed by being presented clothing. Now let's talk about a goblin, about 2 to 3 feet tall, long pointy ears, not bat-like, but more skinny, small beady eyes, sharp aggressive teeth, has a vendetta against humans, and has magic that wizards want, while goblins want magic that wizards have. Very similar descriptions between the two, slight differences: bulbous eyes rather than beady eyes, big ears rather than skinny ears. But those attributes may explain the evolution from the goblin to the house elf based in the servitude of wizards. So first off, let's talk about a little bit of the brief history of the goblins and the house elf. So things that we know is back in the 10th century, so a little over 1,000 years ago, Hogwarts was founded. Two things are important about the founders of Hogwarts. You have Godric Gryffindor, who went to the king of the goblins and requested the finest sword to be made. And that goblin, he made that sword. He then said to Godric, you know what? I like this sword too much. I'm not going to give it to you. And Godric said, I paid for that sword, so it is mine. So I will take it. And the king said, of course, we did make a deal. You did give me gold, so I must give you the sword. But then the king said, that man stole my sword. We have some conflict. And he sent emissaries to Godric Gryffindor to get the sword back. Now Godric, he was a good man. He never attacked the goblins that came to steal the sword back. He did bewitch the goblins to send them back to the Goblin King and say, you're not getting this sword back. This sword is rightfully mine. You can stop, or we will have issues. Eventually, the Goblin King did give up after multiple times of him trying to steal the sword back. It doesn't say in the history within Pottermore about the Sword of Gryffindor why the king gave up, but eventually the king did. Even though, till his death, he did still say that Godric Gryffindor stole that sword, and then the myth was passed throughout history of goblins, and the goblins did believe that Godric stole the sword. Which then comes into play in Deathly Hallows about, the goblins trying to get the sword back. The other thing we know about the founders is with Helga Hufflepuff. Helga Hufflepuff took in house elves, And you're probably thinking, why did Helga Hufflepuff take in house elves? Why didn't she free them? House elves being taken into Hogwarts is important to the story, so we'll get to that eventually, but be patient. Helga took in house elves to keep them safe. Why did they need to be kept safe? We'll get to that too. We know that goblins had it out for the founders, and Godric, instead of killing them, would bewitch them and send them back to the Goblin King. But then eventually the Goblin King stopped sending emissaries to try to steal back the sword. We don't know why, but we know that it stopped. Then we also know that Helga Hufflepuff built the kitchens, built areas in the school for the house elves to be able to work and cook food without being seen and being safe. This is all important to the story, and we will get into more detail. Now let's talk about some of the finer details of the house elf. House elves don't wear clothes. They usually wear linens that they have found and scrapped together to cover their unmentionables. House elves also feel that it is a disgrace to be set free. We also find that in the canon of the Harry Potter books, we only see 4 house elves. In the Harry Potter ride for Battle of the Ministry, we do meet another house elf, but once again, like I said, in the canon of books, not in the ride. So Dolores Umbridge's house elf that is introduced in the Ministry of Magic Q, I'm not using her as an example of this argument because she may or may not be canon, because we only see her in the ride and that's it, and we don't know anything about her other than that. So we see 4 house elves, and that's not a lot. We do hear that fair and far between, mostly found in old wizarding families. The funny thing about it, though, is 3 of the 4 that we see are found within families that are part of the Sacred 28. The Black family, the Malfoy family, and the Crouch family. Is that part of it? No, but it's kind of suspicious that the only 3 that we find are 3 of the oldest pure-blood wizarding families, and we don't see other house elves. The only other house elf we see is Hoki, the house elf, who is the house elf to Hepzibah Smith. That's important too. Because remember, let's go back to Helga Hufflepuff, who made a sanctuary for house elves. Who is Hepzibah Smith related to? The one person that we find out is Helga Hufflepuff. Hepzibah Smith is a descendant of Helga Hufflepuff, so it makes sense for Helga's lineage to have house elves. It's interesting that a descendant of Helga Hufflepuff would have house elves, but maybe Helga had a house elf who she took care of, but with family descendants over 1,000 years, you know, probably the whole idea of, hey, we take care of house elves eventually kind of disappears, and, you know, you get Hepzibah Smith, who doesn't mistreat Hoki, but doesn't exactly treat her well. So you have 4 house elves. All 4 of them are ancient wizarding families, 3 of them part of the Sacred 28, one of them part of the founding members of Hogwarts. We don't know who else has house elves. We don't see them. We don't hear about them. But the mark of a good house elf is not seeing the house elf. So back to the clothing. House elves don't wear clothes. They wear linens that cover up their dimensionals. As I said before, the only way to free a house elf is to present it with clothing. It's peculiar that one of the things that you would want a house elf to do is clean your clothes. Granted, wizards can just use magic to scourgify their clothes, so it's probably not as important to have their clothes cleaned by a house elf, and the house elf isn't going to hand wash clothes. A house elf will probably, your clothes are clean, they're hung up, your shoes are polished. Probably something like that. Doesn't actually need to be like physically washed in a washing board or something of that sort. Why is it important that clothes are given to house elves to free them? Well, what is the difference between wizards and house elves? Wizards wear clothes, house elves don't. Being able to present clothing to a house elf would basically say, I see you as an equal. You cannot be a slave any longer. So I'm going to present you with clothes. You are now free. You are equal to me being able to wear clothes. What separates humans from animals? We wear clothes. We also have a creative imagination, but that is beside the point. We wear clothes, animals don't. When we see animals in clothes, we anthropomorphize them and, you know, they're cute. They're like little humans. So, house elves get clothes, seen as equals. They're free. Why is that important, though? Well, you gotta think, maybe back when house elves first became house elves and came into the servitude of humans, that was the deal, is they were being punished. Punished for what? We'll get to that. But they were being punished, made to be taught a lesson. And once humans saw that hey, you know what? We'll make up to it. You'll be free. We'll give you clothes. You are an equal. Sounds great. But now you're probably saying, but house elves don't want to be free. They see being presented clothes as being failures, as you have failed your master. Why did she take in house elves to work for Hogwarts, but not free them if she had a problem with how they were being treated? Because that's the thing, she took them in because they were being mistreated. She was trying to build a sanctuary in Hogwarts for house elves to be safe. Safe from what? Safe from being murdered once they were freed. There's a reason the Sacred 28 are the ones that had the house elves. The Sacred 28 are the main families of the wizarding world who are ancient almost. They are the names that have been around for hundreds, if not thousands of years. A lot of them have died out or have interbred and lost their names, say the Peverils or the Crouches. What if these Sacred 28, the families that still have it, there were multiple families that fought against this goblin rebellion of some sort, and one making the deal where the goblins had to pay reparations for the death of wizarding family members. Each wizarding family was tasked to take in one of these goblins by contract to serve for that family till the family saw that the debt that goblin had brought was repaid. Because goblins do have a sense of morality when it comes to debts being repaid. So of course a goblin would probably be like, yes, I did wrong. I must repay my debt. We see that with Ludo Bagman, where he pays the goblins in fool's gold, and then they hunt him down and most likely kill him because a debt was needed to be paid. So if you are going to betray us, we are going to kill you. And goblins are a little bit vicious like that, but still, goblins have a very black and white sense of debt and repayment. We see that with Griphook as well. With the sword, does not belong to humans. It is required to go back to the creator on the death of that human or the descendants, because you paid for it. You own it. No one else does. So it must be repaid. And if you want to keep it in your lineage, you do have to repay the goblin every time it is passed down. So of course the goblins are going to probably get into this servitude thinking, yes, the wizards will set us free fairly shortly once we repay our debts. Well, magical binding contracts are pretty hard to break. We do see it a lot with the Goblet of Fire and the Unbreakable Vow. There's other unmentioned bonds that happen. You have the repayment between Harry saving Peter Pettigrew's life, and eventually he feels required to save Harry, which then causes Peter Pettigrew to die himself. You also see where Harry tells Dobby, don't go saving my life, and when Dobby finally does actually save Harry's life, he ends up dying. So life debts and vows and promises are very strong magically and are pretty much unbreakable. So of course the goblins cannot just be freed. It's, hey, in the contract, the goblins have to serve the wizards until the wizards present them with clothes, signifying that you are our equal. It is fair. You have repaid your debt. The wizards, of course, probably feared that, hey, if we set these goblins free, they will turn around and kill us. A couple wizarding families probably were like, hey, look, I feel weird having these goblin slaves, so I'm going to just set them free. Here, have some clothes. You're free. Cool. The goblin is free. Next morning, goblin found dead in streets because other wizards were like, we don't want to free the goblins. And maybe some of the goblins that were freed did attack their muggle families. Hey, I'm free now. Cool. I'm going to kill you. The wizards could have been in the right for some sake, but there were some that were just like, hey, listen, I'm free. I want to go back. We're good. Please don't kill me. So of course, a lot of families were like, I don't want to set them free because number one, they may kill me. Number two, they may get killed themselves, and I would feel bad about that. So this is where Helga Hufflepuff comes in, and she takes in these goblins from these families that just are like, hey, we don't want this. And there were still some wizarding families who probably lost family members who were just like, no, I'm going to keep this goblin. This goblin killed members of my family and friends, so we're going to keep them. And so you have the house elves that live in Hogwarts, and then you have the house elves that stay with the Sacred 28 families, usually in the families of the more morally gray area of good or evil. You have the Blacks, mostly evil. You have the Malfoys, mostly evil. You have the Crouches, who are morally gray, good or evil. And then you have Helga Hufflepuff, who, she's good, but, probably her family throughout the generations became morally gray. Hepzibah Smith isn't exactly a good person. All in all, the house elves who did get freed were killed, so people who wanted to free the house elves but wanted them to live gave them to Helga Hufflepuff to put into Hogwarts to keep them safe from other wizards, and eventually probably supposed to be freed. Time goes on, things get lost, the idea kind of disappears, and eventually house elves don't want to be freed. So why would house elves not want to be freed? Well, of course, they would probably see, well, anytime we get freed, we're killed. So of course we don't want to be freed, we will stay here. They eventually start to breed, maybe not breeding with goblins, because actual goblins probably look at them and go, you are servants to humans? Get away from me, you make me sick, you filthy animal. So of course they're going to interbreed with the goblins who are also house elves. Then probably down the road, the Sacred 28 families usually try to find breeding stock and find the best. Hey, my house elf is actually really good at knowing what I need, and all I have to do is whisper. I say, I wish I had a drink. And then here comes my house elf with a drink. I don't even have to ask the house elf. Well, my house elf can find the smallest bit of dirt in any corner, even if it is the darkest corner there is. Well, these attributes, the big ears, the big eyes, they end up getting bred into the creatures. And the house elves who hear the best have the bigger ears. So eventually, after time, the goblin ears that start like this end up becoming more bat-like, more sonar-driven. They can hear the smallest mess. Then their eyes, their little beady eyes that are used to seeing little tiny coins and fine details within the goblin forges, eventually start to become bigger, to be able to spot dirt from all around, be able to see everything, be able to understand everything that's going on, take in more information so they can better help their owners. And eventually the house elves don't look like goblins anymore. They become their own creatures. Over 1,000 years, this could happen. And of course, Newt Scamander is at the end of that 1,000 years, and it's probably not one of those things that people talk about that, oh yes, house elves, they used to be goblins, but now they are house elves. No, it's wrong. Like, I don't know where house elves come from. Just, rich old families seem to have them. They seem to come with the houses sometimes, but we don't really learn what happens to house elves. And even Hermione's like, there's no history to these house elves. Like, where did they come from? Why do they have to serve humans? It's just, they're there. Well, maybe they wanted to cover up where these house elves came from. Of course, the Sacred 28, the more darker families who are pro-wizard and no, we don't interbreed with these muggles or muggleborns. Maybe we should not tell anybody. Let's delete the history of where the house elves came from. So then we don't have to lose our house elves. All right, so the house elves came from goblins, but why? Why did the house elves get into servitude? Well, one of the biggest things we hear in Harry Potter, in general, just the wizarding world, is the goblin rebellions. There's constantly goblin rebellions. But we also know that the Sword of Gryffindor was created during a contentious time between wizards and goblins, because Godric Gryffindor stole the Goblin King's sword, which was actually bought, but the Goblin King eventually just stopped sending people to try to steal the sword from Gryffindor. Gryffindor didn't want to hurt the goblins. So maybe during this time, a group of goblins tried to rebel against the wizards because, hey, we want our rights. We don't want to be treated. We want our stuff. Stop stealing our stuff. Not realizing that the king was spreading false rumors about, any of these wizards, they come in and they steal all our stuff. So, of course, the propaganda from the goblins is that the wizards are bad and goblins start rebelling. Eventually, there's some sort of kerfuffle, and the goblins who are part of this group who have rebelled, who started this rebellion, maybe Godric Gryffindor is like, listen, maybe you need to learn a lesson. Put them to serve the wizards, to try to maybe create a bridge between wizards and goblins, and be like, listen, you can live in the life of a wizard. And once that wizard sees you as an equal, they will give you clothes and set you free. And maybe the bond between goblin and wizard will be closer, and they will treat you better, and we will have less rebellions. Unfortunately, the wizards are just as evil as the goblins. So, of course, there are wizard families who are like, you know what? I like having these free servants. They do everything I ask. Why would I give them back? The founders of Hogwarts eventually all die out or disappear. We're not really sure what happens to some of them. Eventually, the history is erased, and we eventually get house elves. So, that's it. So, let's go over a quick summary of house elf history. During a goblin rebellion about 1,000 years ago, because things happen. There's tension between goblins and wizards. The outcome is the wizards win against the Goblin Rebellion, but instead of just letting the Goblin Rebellion go back to their homes, they're contracted to repay the damages that they brought, being that they killed a lot of wizards, they ransacked a lot of towns. Cool. You have to serve a wizarding family until they set you free. This was not supposed to be a long-term agreement. It was mostly supposed to be, hey, let the wizards learn who you are, see that you're not all bad, and let the goblins see, hey, look, wizards aren't all that bad. And once they see each other as equals, the wizards will present the goblin with clothes and the goblin will be set free. Unfortunately, the wizards would see some of the goblins be set free. Some of them would be violent, some of them would not be, because not all of the goblins are violent. Not everybody's bad. The goblins would kill their wizarding family after being set free because the wizarding family was like, hey, listen, I feel bad for you. I don't want you to have to serve me. I feel weird about it. So let me set you free. Then the goblin would go, I'm going to kill you. Or, they would be set free. They would be like, cool, well, I'm happy. You're happy. I'm going to go on my way. And then other wizards would be like, ooh, we got to kill that goblin before it kills somebody else. They kill the goblin. So then goblins become afraid to be set free. Wizards who don't want to have these goblin slaves are afraid of setting their goblins free, afraid of being either murdered themselves or the goblin that they have grown attached to being killed. So Helga Hufflepuff takes it upon herself to say, hey, why don't I take in those who do not want their house elves, or at the time, goblins, and they can come and work in the Hogwarts kitchens until this tension between the goblins and the wizards kind of subsides, and then we can set everybody free and they'll live happily ever after. Well, the wizarding families who are part of the Sacred 28, some of them usually in the morally darker side, decide, you know what? We want to keep our free servants because it's awesome. I don't have to shine my shoes anymore. They do it for us. So, of course, what they do is they kind of erase the history. The founders die. It's easier to erase the history. Let's keep it secret that they're goblins. They start to interbreed the best species of these goblins until they become what we know as house elves. Big ears, big eyes, and afraid of being set free because they don't know why. They think if you're set free, you're a disgrace. You've disgraced your honor. And probably orders of, hey, I want you to like serving us. And, eventually it brainwashes them into becoming the house elves, the subservient race that they are. But, of course, you do have some people like Dobby who does whatever he wants. So that's it. House elves are goblins that were tricked into becoming slaves to wizards, and wizards took advantage of it, eventually them turning into what we know as house elves. So Hermione is right to probably try to set them free. Wizards are wrong to be having them. But at this point, goblins and house elves are so different that they have become their own creatures. In the end, that is the dark history of where house elves came from. So, as always, stay marvelous and Nox. Is Draco Malfoy a werewolf? Were love potions used in Harry's 6th year multiple times? And was Dumbledore meant to be someone else the entire time? These are theories that have been pervasive in the series since Half-Blood Prince was released. And some of them have been found as completely false with the release of Deathly Hallows. But some of them still have not been confirmed at all. So today we're going to be talking about 5 Half-Blood Prince fan theories that may make you read Harry Potter and the Half-Blood Prince a little bit differently. So first, let's start off with one of my favorite theories, and it's that Draco Malfoy is a werewolf. And I'm sure most of you are going to say, well, no, he's not a werewolf. We never see that. And especially movie watchers. If you've only seen the movie, this theory is going to seem really wrong to you. Because in the books, we never get a direct confirmation that Malfoy has a dark mark. In the movie, we do. He literally lifts up his sleeve and says, he chose me.
Trust me, I was chosen.
In the books, that doesn't happen. And you may say, when he was in Borgin and Burke's, he lifted up his left sleeve and showed something to Borgin, and then Borgin seemed a little bit worried. But let me point that out. What did he say to Borgin? Because we heard what he said. He didn't say, I have friends who will make sure you do it. No, he said, Fenrir Greyback is a close family friend. And what is Fenrir Greyback? Everybody in the back, let me know. Werewolf. What if he was showing a werewolf bite, not the dark mark, saying, hey, look, I've been bitten by a werewolf, and I've got werewolf friends. So it's not just me you have to worry about. I've got very dangerous werewolf friends. Because Fenrir Greyback isn't just any werewolf. He's kind of the leader of the radical werewolves, the ones that attack humans for pleasure. And you're probably going, no, Malfoy is not a werewolf. We've never seen him turn into a werewolf. And I'll agree with you. We never saw him turn into a werewolf. We also see Snape trying to help Malfoy. And yes, maybe Snape is trying to help Malfoy because he knows the plan is to kill Dumbledore at the end of the semester, but doesn't know how the plan is going going to be. So he can't tell Dumbledore and say, hey, we gotta figure something out because this is his plan and we don't want anybody else to be in danger. Or he could have said, hey, I know what you are and I'm trying to give you a potion to help you. He says no, because he's locking himself in the room requirement a lot. May even be locking himself in the room requirement as a werewolf, turning in the room requirement and tearing stuff up. We don't know. One thing we do know is the description of Malfoy's looks throughout the 6th book are the same way that Remus Lupin is described. Coincidence? Maybe. But J.K. Rowling is very particular in how she describes her characters. Malfoys are always described as having a drawling voice. Both Lucius and Draco have that same description. She's very consistent on the descriptions that she gives with characters, especially when you hear them off screen or you see them in a letter. So you know that's not a fake letter from Dumbledore. When you get a Dumbledore letter, it's in the long, scrolling handwriting. Always. That's how it's described. That's how it's shown in the book. So then you know that's not a fake letter from Dumbledore. Not that we got a lot of fake letters in the book, so we didn't have to think, oh, maybe this is a fake letter. But the other thing that we do know is Fenrir Greyback is used by Voldemort to get things done. Hey, I need you to do something for me. Well, I don't want to do something for you. All right, well, I'm gonna have a friend pay a visit to your child tonight. Okay, I'll do what you want me to. That friend being Fenrir Greyback, who will situate himself next to houses of people that Voldemort has told him, hey, go in there and turn that child into a werewolf. Make that family suffer. And if you don't have family, guess what? You're dead. Voldemort will just kill you. So he would use Fenrir Greyback to enact punishments. Fenrir Greyback was doing that long before Voldemort. He did it to Lupin because Lupin's dad was doing something that Fenrir did not like. But what did he do? He broke in and bit Remus. Guess what happened to the Malfoys? Voldemort was very unhappy with how Lucius handled the ministry. Well, I'm going to give you two things. You are going to be bit by a werewolf and you have to kill Dumbledore or I will kill you and your family. It's right there. It's all right there in the page. I think in the 6th book, he was supposed to be a werewolf. It was supposed to come out at the end that he was a werewolf, but the author changed their mind and it was dropped because in the 7th book, nothing's brought up about Draco being a werewolf. Fenrir is still there, but Draco's not. Draco's still going to Hogwarts. Nobody says anything about him being a werewolf. So most likely not a werewolf, but he could still be a werewolf within the books. In the movies, he's definitely been proven that he is not a werewolf. So I will give you that. Draco is a Death Eater, not a werewolf, because in the movies, he gets a dark mark, which little things like that I do think are canon. If there are details within the movies that support ideas within the books, they are canon. But if they contradict the books, they are not canon. Another theory that is very big in the fandom is Neville and his wand. This theory is not so much theory as it is canon to the fandom, fandom, whatever. Because all of the pieces are there, but it just has never been fully confirmed. Neville Longbottom wasn't a hapless wizard because he was clumsy and lacked confidence. It was because he didn't have a proper wand. And I've talked about this a little bit in another theory. So if you want to check it out, it's right here. It's about Ron having an improper wand for his first 2 years. So it's something that happens, and it's because of the wood in the core of Neville's wand, where the combination of Neville's original wand, which was his father's wand, is very temperamental and is extremely loyal to the original owner. And because of that, it wasn't loyal to Neville. So Neville wasn't able to unlock its full power. But the way to unlock the full power of Neville's father's wand, that is now Neville's for the first 5 books, is to show confidence in your magic, which of course he did not have for the first 4 books. And I have another theory where I talk about where his confidence came from, if you want to click over here. But Neville unlocked his confidence in his 5th year, which then unlocked his power, which he rivaled Hermione in his 5th year at learning Defense Against the Dark Arts. Granted, Hermione wasn't as apt at Defense Against the Dark Arts as Harry was, but she was almost as good and was always the first one to master a spell that Harry taught her. And then Neville started mastering them just as fast. Unfortunately, the wand broke when he was in the Ministry, and it's like, oh crap, that was my dad's wand. I just unlocked its power, and now it's broken. But luckily, he gets the last wand from Ollivanders, and happily ever after, the wand chooses the wizard, and guess what happened? It chose him. It immediately unlocked its power, and he had the confidence to use it. So not only did he have a fully powered wand, he had the confidence to use his full power, and was able to basically rival Harry in the confidence and power level to where he became what Harry was before he left Hogwarts. So it's easy as that. It is a theory because it's never been confirmed, but the way that wand magic, like all of the pieces line up that Neville was a good wizard, he just had an unloyal wand, which then eventually became loyal, but then broke, and then he got his new wand. So his journey of growth led him to getting a new wand, which unlocked his full potential and allowed him to become the hero that he was meant to be based on the prophecy, because he also was marked as an equal by Voldemort, and without him, Voldemort would not have been defeated. Love potions are a very big topic in Half-Blood Prince. We're introduced in the Weasley shop to love potions. Slughorn's first class were introduced to Amortentia, but was there a reason for that? I mean, there were 2 few small subplot stories that happen in the background about it, but was there more to that? Or was it just small details? The two background plots that happened were that Merope used Love Potion to seduce Tom Riddle Sr., and then the Romilda Vane cauldron cakes spiked with Love Potion that Ron eats, which then reveals the poison of the oak matured mead. So cool, that was just, hey, look, there's background, like this is how Tom Riddle was born, and this is how we find out that there was another killing plot. Or was there more to the Love Potion story? Let's start with the first one that is the more outlandish one, and that's Ginny. So the theory is that because more in the movies than in the books, Harry just suddenly becomes infatuated with Ginny and there's no chemistry with it, is that Ginny is spiking Harry with Love Potion, and that is why he falls in love with her. Okay, well, let's go through it a little bit. In the books, it's a little more subtle on how Harry kind of falls in love with Ginny. And I know some people are like, well, it just came on too quickly. And it's like, did it though? It was being set up for quite a while. So let's start the sixth book, because that's what most people are going to say is, well, it starts in the sixth book. Okay, let's start with sixth book. He spends the entire summer with the Weasleys. He's literally only in Privet Drive for a week. He just got back, he just got settled in, and he's having to go with Dumbledore, and he gets dropped off at the Weasleys for the entire summer. Okay, the entire summer with the Weasleys. That's great. Are you saying if you were not trapped in a house with a family that you get along with, and there's a girl close to your age that is considered one of the most attractive girls of your year, or of her year, but I know they talk about how she's like the most popular girl in school. She's a Weasley. All the Weasleys except for Ron are popular. You're not gonna fall in love with her. Okay, but Harry spends the entire summer with Ginny. He's like, I like having this girl around. They get to the train to get back to school, and she goes, I'm gonna go see my boyfriend, who I haven't seen in 2 months. And Harry goes, but you hang out with us. I want you to hang out here. He's gotten used to her. He's not head over heels with her. He doesn't understand what he's feeling. He's just like, but I like when you're here, it makes me happy. And then he starts to slowly realize, when he sees her kissing Dean, and he's just like, that son of a bitch kissing Ginny, I'm mad about that. And he's still kind of like, no, it's because she's like a sister to me, right? Like it's Ron's sister, I just feel protective over her, not jealous, right? But the big giveaway that he is already infatuated with her is the Amortentia, because one of the scents that he smells is her scent, or Molly Weasley's scent, because he does make a remark at Christmas that he's like, Molly smells like Ginny, and it's like, dude, you're already going after your best friend's sister, which is kind of a thin line to cross on the bro code, but to go after your best friend's mom, that's crossing a big line. Don't do that. But that wasn't the first time that he even thought about Ginny in a relatively romantic manner. It actually started in Order of the Phoenix. And you're thinking, where in Order of the Phoenix was Harry thinking about Ron? I'm writing fan fiction now, apparently. Where in Order of the Phoenix was Harry thinking about Ginny? Because when I read it, all I could see was he was obsessed with Cho Chang. And it's like, yeah, he liked Cho Chang. But there was a moment after they leave the Hogshead with the first DA interest meeting, and Hermione and Ron are bickering back and forth about Michael Corner and her and Ginny dating. And Hermione just casually throws out, yeah, well, she's done with Harry, because Ron's like, yeah, she likes Harry though. Why is she dating Michael Corner? And Hermione goes, no, she's done with Harry. She's moved on. And then Harry snaps out of his daydream about Cho Chang and goes, wait, yeah, she does talk to me, doesn't she? Now it's in his head. Because who gave Ginny that advice? Hermione. Hermione told Ginny, hey, if you want to attract Harry, you need to act normal around him. So she does. Then she just casually brings up, yeah, no, Ginny's comfortable around you now. She doesn't like you anymore. And Harry's like, wait, but I'm the chosen one. Everyone should like me. He doesn't know he's the chosen one at that point. Yes, I know. But still, he's like, but I liked being needed and wanted. And it just kind of rolls off him like water on a duck's back. But, I think it kind of grabbed on somewhere. So then in the 6th year, he's thinking about that more. He's done with Cho. Now it's like, the girl that was always there, who used to like me, doesn't seem to like me that way anymore. But now I like spending time with her. So it was a very gradual setup. It was very subtle because it's not the main story. I don't think she love potioned him. But I think somebody in the Weasley family had to deal with a love potion. And I'm not talking about Ron with Romilda, but I am talking about Ron. Ron was under the influence of a love potion for most of his 6th year. And you're probably thinking, no, it was just a small portion when he ate those cauldron cakes. But it's like, no. Harry was not the only one who spiked his pumpkin juice before that Quidditch game. And yes, I know Harry didn't actually spike the pumpkin juice, but somebody did. And that was Lavender Brown with love potion. There's a lot of sketchy scenarios with Ron and Lavender, because he goes from not really paying attention to her to all of a sudden, being obsessed with her, to then over Christmas break not caring about her, to coming back from Christmas break being obsessed with her, then being expired love potioned, then poisoned, and then not being obsessed with her at all, and eventually breaking her heart. Because unfortunately, she was not able to dose him with love potion while he was in the hospital wing. So she started dosing him with love potion. Christmas break comes around. He's not with her for however long Christmas break is because they go back to the burrow. They're separated. So the love potion wears off. He's back to normal. He's like, I really don't like this Lavender girl. I don't know why I'm spending so much time with her. And Harry goes, yeah, you spend a lot of time with her. That's weird. And it's kind of hard to be with you when you're with her because it's kind of gross. And he's like, yeah, but also at the same time, it's nice, I guess, I think, I don't know. And then he comes back and you think, he's probably going to break up with her. Nope, back to the old ways until Slughorn gives him a cure for the love potion that Romilda Vane accidentally gave him. But of course, if you're going to give a potion that gets rid of expired love potion, it'll get rid of regular love potion because he was double thing. So Slughorn probably gave him a very strong antidote to love potion, which would have wiped out any love potion in his system. And then he got poisoned and then was stuck in the hospital wing for quite a while, where he wouldn't have been able to get love potioned for a while. And then eventually Lavender just gave up because clearly she saw that, he's in love with Hermione. Hermione's in love with him, and I just need to step back. Maybe I'll go love potion now, Longbottom now. Maybe Seamus? I don't know. We'll see. But there is no proof that Lavender was love potioning Ron, but all signs point to probably way more than Ginny love potioning Harry. Lavender probably used a little bit of love potion on Ron. Maybe not Amortentia, but something enough to get him to be more infatuated with her. Now let's talk about a really odd fan theory. This one was immediately debunked as soon as Deathly Hallows came out, but it was a theory that was very, very big when Half-Blood came out. Like almost immediately after the release of Half-Blood, when everybody was able to read it, there were theories all over the internet. Is Dumbledore really dead? And who is RAB? Were the two big theories. Is Dumbledore really dead? And who is RAB? Those were the two things that were being theorized right after Half-Blood Prince dropped. One of the theories that came out of is Dumbledore really dead is Dumbledore really actually Dumbledore? Or is he Ronald Weasley from the future? This is a weird theory, which of course has been completely debunked by now. There were a couple already weird tendencies with it, but people just kind of threw that away. There was a point where Slughorn talks about Aberforth and he's like, but most people forget about Aberforth. But we never actually meet Dumbledore's brother before Deathly Hallows. I mean, we do, but we don't know it's him. We meet him in Order of the Phoenix when they first step foot in the Hogshead. And Harry even remarks, something familiar about this guy, but we forget about that until Deathly Hallows at the end when he ends up in the Hogshead and realizes, I should have known, Professor Dumbledore. But the theory was, which it breaks the canon anyway, but so has everything else since then with time turners, is Ron takes a time turner, travels back in time, way back in time, and follows the events because he knows he can't change certain events, but he can also guide the people to where they need to eventually take down Voldemort. So he goes through, he's setting up all of the events. That's why Dumbledore knows everything before it happens. That's what explains it, is of course he knows. He was there next to Harry the whole time because he's Ron. Because there's a point where we see a flashback of him with Tom Riddle twice, multiple flashbacks with him and Tom Riddle, where it's remarked that he has auburn hair. So of course, to some people, auburn and orange, those are the same thing. So yeah, he's a ginger. He's a Mingy Ginge. So of course, they're the same person, right? Yeah, he traveled back in time. He broke the laws of time travel within the wizarding world, traveled back in time, became the headmaster of Hogwarts, discovered the 12 uses of dragon blood, worked with Nicholas Flamel on the Philosopher's Stone so he can get a hold of it and hide it in Hogwarts to allow Harry to face Voldemort. Yeah, all of it was Ron the whole time because they both like candy. That was the reasoning, is Dumbledore and Ron both like sweets and we're both red-headed-ish. So clearly they're the same person because we can't have Dumbledore be dead. And that was the theory, is Ron was Dumbledore. But of course, as soon as Deathly Hallows came out, it was confirmed that Dumbledore also not only had a brother who was the innkeeper of Hogshead, but also had a sister who then we find out later is an Obscurus. So, okay, Dumbledore is not Ron. But in a way, that theory did work mostly before Deathly Hallows came out. And then as soon as it came out, it was a dead theory. But it was a cool idea. I enjoyed it. It was a fun idea that, oh, hey, Ron is Dumbledore. But Deathly Hallows completely blew that out of the water as untrue. And this one I will go over quick. If you want more details on it, I do have a full theory that I have already posted this month on this theory. But this is a theory that does change how you read it, so it works in this setting as well. Is Felix Felicis is fake. It doesn't actually make you lucky. It's a placebo of sorts, where you take it, you think it's supposed to make you lucky, and it actually allows you to use your instinctual magic, because magic is instinctual. You use your wand or your finger to to harness that power and use spells to actually like concentrate it. Wands are more powerful than wandless magic, but wandless magic is still powerful, but more unwieldy. The wand helps concentrate that power and allow you to do more complex spells and incantations. But like potions, you don't use your wand. You just use magical ingredients and you pull the magic out of that. So Felix Felicis is just basically water. And I'm sure you'll probably say, well, yeah, but it was used and people say it was lucky. Yeah, because they believed it was lucky. They didn't realize it was their own instinctual magic that was allowing them to be lucky. The fact that Ron thought he had taken Felix Felicis, and when Harry said, this is how I feel under Felix Felicis, and Ron was like, yeah, that's exactly how it feels to be on Felix Felicis, and they're like, Ron, you didn't take Felix Felicis. And he's like, oh yeah, well, I felt that way. Right there is the proof that Felix Felicis is fake. And I'm sure you're gonna say, well, Slughorn used it all the time. Yeah, Slughorn's not the best authority for things working well. And I'm sure you'll be like, yeah, well, Slughorn used it twice. If you've read the book, if you've only watched the movie, you'll be like, he used it 3 times because there's a point right before the Battle of Hogwarts that he kind of, and it's supposed to be Felix Felicis because it's the same type of bottle that he has it in the 6th movie. But listen, him taking Felix Felicis did not help anybody at all. It may have helped himself, I guess, but the point still stands is, you know, the magic works because you don't realize that it's not the potion. Because if the potion's brewed improperly, it just doesn't work. Oh, take it. Oh, I don't feel lucky. Oh, well, it must be that you brewed the potion incorrectly because it takes a bunch of ingredients, a lot of time, and you get very little out of it. Also the reason why both sides don't use it constantly, because it's also, if you use it constantly, it seems to stop working and the effects don't really work. Oh, it's because, you know, eventually your body is like, wait, this is, I'm using my own magic. This isn't giving me any luck. It's not warping reality around me. And then you get confident and then your instinctual magic just stops working. You go, I can survive jumping off this building. And then you jump off the building and whoops. Delusions of grandeur, what it's called. But if you want more information about it, like I said, the video will be up here. So make sure to check it out. And that's it. Those are 5-ish theories, maybe 6, depending on how you break down the love potion one. But those are all theories that knowing these theories and reading the books as you know these theories will change your perception of these books. If you go in thinking Draco's a werewolf, I'm going to read this book, imagining Draco being a werewolf, all the pieces will fall into place. Same with the Felix Felicis. You read the whole book and you're like, yeah, that makes sense with the Felix Felicis. Same with the love potion ones. You'll also see the confidence within Neville, and maybe you'll even see like, there are a lot of similarities between Ron and Dumbledore. Do we ever actually see Ron and Dumbledore in the same place? Besides the Great Hall, do they ever actually interact to the level of, you know, paradoxically? Not sure. But that's it for today. Stay marvelous, Nox.